The Homabay governor Gladys Wanga is in deep trouble after the Siaya governor James Orengo attacked her, reducing her into a village girl. Welcome to Kenya Lens Media, where we bring you news updates as they break, and kindly if you are new here, consider subscribing. Now, a fierce political confrontation unfolded in Homabay on Tuesday after Siaya Governor James Orengo openly challenged Homabay Governor Gladys Wanga in what now appears to be a widening battle for control, influence and also direction within the Orange Democratic Movement ahead of the 2027 general election. The high-profile rally held in region long viewed as Governor Wanga's political stronghold drew larger attention and exposed growing divisions within the Nyanza political bloc, divisions that could significantly reshape opposition politics in the years ahead. The gathering in Homabay was more than just another political rally. It was a direct display of strength, and Governor James Orengo arrived in Homabay flanked by allies, leaders, supporters, and members of the emerging political camp under the banner of the Mwananchi movement. The message was unmistakable. The Siaya governor was not only taking his political campaign beyond his county borders, but also stepping directly into a territory widely associated with the ODM national chairperson Gladys Wanga. For years, Homabay has been considered one of the Wanga's most reliable political bases, and her influence in the country has steadily grown since her days as the woman representative, where she built a strong grassroots network and established herself as one of the region's most visible political figures. But on Tuesday afternoon, Governor Orengo appeared determined to challenge that dominance publicly and also forcibly. Supporters filled the rally venue in large numbers, placards were raised high, chants echoed through the crowd, and as the gathering gained momentum, it became increasingly clear that the confrontation was no longer being handled quietly behind closed doors. It had now moved fully into the public arena. At the center of the political storm was Orengo's sharp criticism of Governor Wanga, and speaking before supporters, the veteran politician accused his rival of repeatedly mentioning his name during her own political rallies linked to ODM grassroots campaigns. He responded with a stern warning that Orengo reminded the crowd of his long political journey and his role during Kenya's struggle for multi-party democracy. Without softening his words, he drew a distinction between leaders of his generation and what he described as a newer political class engaged in political maneuvering. And for many observers, the remarks represented one of the strongest public attacks between senior ODM leaders in the recent years. And beyond the words themselves, the symbolism was powerful. A senior party elder openly confronting the party's national chairperson on her political turf before thousands of supporters. The fallout now threatens to deepen an already visible fictional divide inside the Orange Democratic Movement. And at the heart of the conflict is the rise of the Mwananchi movement. The faction has increasingly positioned itself as an alternative voice within ODM, and its leaders argue that the party has drifted away from the original identity, one built around social justice, grassroots empowerment, and also defending ordinary citizens. The movement is now trying to tap into growing frustration among sections of the youth and low-income supporters who feel excluded from the economic progress despite years of loyalty to the opposition. That message appears to be gaining traction in parts of Nyanza, particularly among young voters facing unemployment, rising living costs, and also economic uncertainty. Political analysts also say this internal disagreement may no longer be about personalities alone. It is increasingly becoming a battle of ideology, direction, and succession. And hanging heavily over the conflict is the future of the ODM itself. And for more than 2 decades, the party has maintained strong dominance across the Nyanza region, largely because of its image as a united political force. That unity helped consolidate millions of voters and gave the opposition enormous influence in national politics. But the emerging divisions now threaten that foundation, and Nyanza remains one of the country's most politically significant voting blocks with more than 2 million registered voters. Any major split within the region could have far-reaching national consequences ahead of the 2027 elections. The timing of the conflict is also significant, and Kenya's political landscape is already beginning to shift towards the next electoral cycle. Across the country, alliances are quietly forming, and political camps are also reorganizing, and succession battles are becoming increasingly visible. And within ODM, questions about future leadership continue to grow. Former Prime Minister Raila Odinga remains the party's towering figure and one of the Kenya's most influential political leaders. But as attention increasingly turns towards the future, different leaders within the movement are positioning themselves for greater influence. The underlying competition is now becoming harder to ignore, and Governor Orengo, a respected lawyer and long-serving political figure, carries the image of a veteran reformist deeply linked to the Kenya's democratic struggles. And Governor Wanga, meanwhile, represents a younger but highly influential generation of leaders that has steadily risen through the ODM ranks. Their confrontation is therefore being viewed not just as the local disagreement, but as part of the larger struggle over who shapes the future direction of the party. Monday's rally also demonstrated another important reality, that the Linda Mwananchi faction appears increasingly organized. The Homabay event came barely 2 weeks after another large political gathering in Kisumu, and the rapid succession of rallies suggests careful planning, strong mobilization capacity, and growing confidence among Orengo's allies. For ODM's top leadership, that presents a difficult challenge, and public disagreements between senior figures risk weakening party discipline and also confusing supporters. At the same time, attempts to silence internal criticism could fuel even greater rebellion from leaders who feel sidelined. So far, the divisions remain largely regional, but political observers warn that if the conflict escalates unchecked, it could eventually weaken ODM's negotiating power within future national politics. History has shown that political fragmentation in strongholds often creates opportunities for rival parties to expand their influence. That possibility is already rising. Concern among sections of the opposition, and behind the political speeches and public rallies are ordinary supporters watching closely. For many residents across Nyanza, ODM has long symbolized political identity, loyalty, and also resistance. And internal fights among the senior leaders therefore carry emotional weight far beyond normal political disagreements. Some supporters now fear that prolonged infighting could divide communities and also weaken the region's collective bargaining power nationally. Others believe internal competition may instead force leaders to reconnect with the grassroots concerns and also become more accountable. But regardless of the differing views, one reality is becoming increasingly difficult to deny. The political calm that once defined ODM's dominance in Nyanza is fading. The rallies, the public warnings, the rival factions, and the growing battle for the influence all point towards a party entering one of the most delicate moments in its history. For now, both sides appear determined to hold their ground, and Governor Wanga continues to wield institutional authority as ODM national chairperson. Governor Orengo, on the other hand, is relying on political experience, grassroots messaging, and public mobilization to challenge the current order. And as the road to 2027 slowly begins to take shape, the confrontation between the two leaders is expected to intensify. And with each rally, each speech, and each public appearance, the struggle for the soul of ODM is becoming more visible to the country. What began as an internal disagreement is now unfolding openly before the eyes of millions of Kenyans, and the consequences may stretch far beyond Homabay or Siaya. They could ultimately determine the future direction of opposition politics in Kenya. And in politics, parties are often tested not by the strength of their opponents, but by the battles within their own walls. And today, inside Orange Democratic Movement, those battles are no longer hidden. That is all for today from Kenya Lens Media, where we bring you news updates as they break, and kindly, if you're new here, consider subscribing.